Get this thing started. Get
So
this
I can
party
definitely
started.
go steeper.
Yeah, we're going to draw some lines in
Great.
here, but it is the 4th of August, 2015. Now, overall, very good swing. The alignment is good. We should always line up parallel to the left of the target. So that being our target here, you can see your body is basically parallel to the left, kind of like railroad tracks. So this is good. I want to pick on the bad things and compliment you on the good things. So your alignment is quite good. You got your body parallel to the target line, so everything looks really good. You could be a shade more angular in the setup. I'm going to split the screen and put one of my favorite people next to you. And short, tall, doesn't make much difference. But this is Ernie Els, who happens to be 6'4". But Ernie's got a bend from the hip joint and very little other bend. So if you take the base of the spine, get rid of that for the moment. If I take the base of the spine and go up to the top of the spine, most people, shorter guys might be closer to 45, but guys, you're what, 6'1", somewhere in there?
Six,
Yeah, 6 feet, 6'1", whatever. But so guys like you would be closer to the 40. So you're actually a little bit upright here. And so when we look at the belt line, your belt line's going to point out here just a few feet past the ball. Now what happens if we're in a setup and I raise myself up? If I continue raising you up, you'd now be swinging on a baseball plane. So your setup influences the path of the swing. Does that make sense? So if we bend over a little bit more, and basically it's going to feel like your nose is touching the ground, but this will be the amount that it would be to get you down to that 40, would be just a inch and a half maybe, something like that. So by bending at the hips like that, he's a little bit more angular. You've got a little bit more roundness in the back. That impedes your ability to coil, so that cuts back on your power a little bit. But here's the checkpoint for you. You can get a protractor in your head and figure 45 is 45. And you're an architect. You got these angles. You're an architect, right?
No, no, no.
No, what?
Finance guy.
Finance guy. Okay. I don't know why. I was thinking you were. I think Borders told me you were an architect. Bonehead. He had me thinking. I figured you were over there designing something for the Chinese. Oh my gosh. Well, that's even more exciting doing finance with the Chinese. Anyway, so you can picture 45 though. It's just right in between the 90. So 45, and we're going to bend over a little bit more. Not critical, but a little bit more belt line pointing down towards the ball. His belt line points about a foot past the ball, and that's where we want it. So that's a good visual checkpoint for you. And for all intents and purposes, if you just bend over a little bit more, your butt's out a little bit more, you'll be more balanced. What happens when we stand up too tall is it's difficult to get the overall balance. When he bends at the hips, the butt goes out here and counterbalances the upper part, and he ends up with what I call a doorway balance. We take this straight down, and you can see his toes are just about an inch or so away from the doorway. So he's very balanced. You can imagine pushing on him this way or that way, and he's not going to budge. So when we look at you, though, it's not quite as stable looking. We don't see quite that stability. If we draw the line down from the shoulders, get that at 90 again, now we're maybe 3 inches away from the doorway. So no big deal. We're just going to get a little bit more bend from the hips, and that'll make you more stable. May feel a little weird first, like the grip, but that's going to be good. Okay, so that's basically the setup. Little tiny little change there. The other thing you'll notice is that we want to be able to see a little bit of left forearm showing. When you get a setup, if you look from down the line like I'm here, if the right hand comes in here like this, shoulders are square, you can see a little bit of left forearm. If I'm over here like this, I'm going the opposite extreme, but the shoulders aren't square. So I want you to be in a position here where that right arm being bent, you should be able to see a little bit of left forearm when you're looking in the mirror. So butt's out, belt line a foot past the ball, and a little bit of left forearm showing there gives us a good setup. A couple tiny little things, but they're going to make a big difference here, as we'll see how this affects the front of the swing too. Let me get a cone on you here. I don't want to make anything complicated, but also don't want to be incomplete here, so be sure and stop me if it doesn't make sense. Now the proper swing, and we'll show you through Ernie's swing here, as he swings, this is called the shaft plane down here. As he swings, that club is going to progress up the shaft plane, that's that bottom line, and he basically would stay right on that line, except for as the right arm folds, it begins to bring him up the plane. So when he's that far back, it's on the forearm. That's a quarter position, I call it here, 1/4 of the whole swing. When we get back to the half position, as I call it here, with the left arm's parallel, the hands are basically over the bicep, middle of the bicep here, and that shaft points down at the target line. That's the definition of being on plane. Now let's bring him back down here, and we'll get him back to this position here. And watch as you go back. By standing up a little too tall, the tendency is for the swing to go a little too much over this way. So beautiful job. You match that up just beautifully at that point. Now, what should happen is that should go up the plane slightly through the forearm. And when you go back, you see it stays a little bit under the forearm, thus a little bit too flat. Now, I think you hit the nail on the head. You were probably picking the club up, and he just overdid it. Very seldom can you get people to overdo or exaggerate. That's one of the secrets to improving. So we won't blame that guy. He's just he wasn't there to see you where you ended up. And most people go right back to being too upright. So that's a pretty safe bet. But you'll notice how that right arm is kind of collapsing behind you a little bit instead of staying as extended as it can be. So if I let that right arm collapse behind me, that club's going to get too far around, isn't it? If I keep that right arm a little straighter, that's going to be key. That's the width portion of this this deal here, keeping the width. And I'll show you that as we go. But there's no reason that right arm should be that folded at that point. So that right arm is basically going to go from, I don't know, let's call it 10 degrees of bend, and then it's going to go to 90 degrees at the top. So we want to gradually fold that arm as need be, but that's bending a little too fast. So it's already at 90 degrees there, so it just collapsed behind you. Get him to that half position. And again, when the left arm's parallel to the ground, the hands are over the bicep. So all you got to do to get that is keep that right arm straight. That right arm stays straight. Can't stay totally straight because you can't reach it. But we don't want it collapsing either, otherwise we have no width.
I'm always focused on keeping the left arm straight.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? That's where most people are. I can't tell you the number of pros that I've taught that they said the same thing. They said, man, how come nobody ever told me about the right arm? And that's because none of them ever studied with Mac O'Grady or Mike Bender as I have, because Mac O'Grady was the first guy to really figure out the importance of the right arm in the swing. And it's an odd sounding thing because everybody is so left side focused. But that's kind of old news. It's been around for a while. But anyway, that right arm should have a little bit of outward pressure as we go back. Try to keep it as straight as you can. Matter of fact, I'll give you a good example of how important this is. If you had $10,000 to go take a lesson with Butch Harmon, maybe it's $5,000 still, something that'd be a real bargain for him. But if you went out and took a lesson from him, that's exactly what he'd tell you. That right arm should stay as straight as possible because the width is key to everything. So as you keep going back, that right arm is just collapsed, and the club gets so low that there's really not much angle to get back to the ball without a potential for topping. Body angles are great. You're doing a great job of turning, doing everything really well. But now he gets up here, and you can see the left arm goes across the shoulder. So your left arm will hug the chest, but gradually it's going to work up across the shoulder like that. So again, when you look in the mirror, I want you to see that left arm closer to being across the shoulder rather than being way down there. So first checkpoint, you're good. Second checkpoint, we need to be up a little bit. Not by picking it up, but by swinging it up. And like I said, if that right arm stays straight versus collapsing, it's a done deal. So that's the key to getting you on a more upright plane, is the right arm being straight. Now from over here, you're so low now that it's difficult to come back down. And what brings us down the plane is the right arm extending. You're already down the plane, so it has to just kind of sit there and wait. Now watch when Ernie comes down, you can see how that's a perfect angle to enter the ball. It looks very similar to the backswing, doesn't it, where it was. But that right arm is beginning to straighten out. It's gone from 90 to, I don't know, maybe 110, but it's extending out. And yours is continuing on down, and you were so flat, that right arm's still stuck at 90. So this is the #1 power accumulator in the swing, is that right arm extending. So that's why guys that are tall like you that have long levers have an advantage for distance, but you're not using it. You know, it'd be like punching a guy and your arms are tied to your shoulders and you can't really get any extension. So from that angle of attack, it's difficult for you to produce any power. Again, we're not worried about that. It'll take care of itself. So at impact, you're actually back to quite a good position here. Good instincts there. If we get Ernie to that same impact position, you can see his body's turned a little bit more. But overall, your right arm's doing a good job of straightening out. You're back to the ball. Because the grip is weak, as we'll see from the front, the face is open, pointing a little bit to the right. Now, if you've been hitting the ball really straight all the time, as you mentioned, then you're probably adding a little flip. Once you get loosened up, you'd start flipping the club. Good eye-hand coordination teaches you how to square things up at the bottom. Terrible way to be consistent. You can't get much better that way. But hey, I'd rather have coordination in my hands than nowhere at all, which would be the case for me. I have really good eye-hand coordination. I was a good ping pong player. I was a good tennis player, is a good pitcher, but after that, it was it was pretty much done. See, that club face has stayed a little bit open relative to the path. That would be more square because it'd be lined up with your with your spine here. So anyway, so the face just sloped, and that's the grip. Don't worry about that. So overall, all I've really told you so far is two things in the setup: a little more bend at the hips, a little bit more squaring up where we can see a little bit of left forearm, and then basically keep that right arm straight as you swing, and that solves all your problems. You just got to find out what that feels like. That's the real secret. Regular speed one time here. Overall, a lot of good things. I'd rather deal with a swing that's too flat than one that's too upright, so you're in good shape there. Now, from this standpoint, this is how we're going to get the shoulder square. I'm going to go ahead and use Ernie again. I got hundreds, thousands of swings maybe in here, but I just really like Ernie's swing a lot. Kind of graphic, being a real tall guy too. It
I like Ernie
shows
too,
up
so
better. Yeah, just a real efficient swing. Now, what you'll notice from the front view is this is called the secondary angle. There should be about a 9 or 10 degree lean to the right. Depending upon where I draw that line, it's either 9 or 10, but in this case it's 10 because I drew that bottom part a little forward. But anyway, the spine is tilted just a little bit to the right, which is logical. If you think about the right hand being lower than the left, that'll bring the right shoulder a little bit lower, and all things being equal, tilts the spine a little bit. Now, notice something about you. You see how you're kind of
right over it.
straight up and down, which is logical, which is natural, but it's not proper. So we want to get you into what we call a reverse K position, and you're kind of in a straight up and down. You're almost in a regular K. So if you were to take your hands and drop them down, your hands are touching your knees at the same spot wherever that happens to be. I want you to reach down behind your right knee a little bit. Notice what happens when I do that. My hips kind of bump forward just a shade, and there I've got the angle that we're looking for. Looking in the mirror, the shirt buttons are going to come pretty close to that left calf. So simple little adjustment, just kind of reaching down, scratching the back of your leg. And now watch what that looks like from the front. If I do that, I'm here. Now as I reach down and scratch this, all of a sudden you can see the left forearm. So we're killing a bunch of birds with one stone. So when I talk about things from one angle, it's the same thing from the other angle. It's not two things to do, it's just one. So we fixed that problem we saw from the back just with that little bit of a tilt. Here's the beauty of this. When he's got this little bit of a reverse K here, you can see how it looks like a backwards K there, can't you? When he's got that little bit of reverse K, all he's got to do is rotate around the spine, and his weight is automatically shifting to the right. Since everything's in front of the spine, everything's turning to the right, then his weight's already over on the right side. So the weight shift is a result of the turn. Most people think of weight shift and they start thinking, I got to move laterally back this way and laterally through that way. No, you don't. You get in the right setup, you pivot, and your weight's already shifted. So you can see how he's at the back side of that box now. Now with you being here, you'd have to make a couple extra moves to get over there, which you in fact do. But it makes the game harder when you're actually, we saw the spine was relatively straightforward, but you're actually leaning a little left. Now watch as you start back, and you have to literally artificially shift your weight, which any sport you've ever played told you got to get behind the ball. So you're doing a good job of getting coiled behind the ball. And so you almost get back into as good a position as him. But you're still a little bit more weight on the left than we want. So that's fixed with the setup. We fix the setup and we just practice that pivot. It's really quite a simple thing. Hard part is just getting used to the feel, because it does feel different. Now from that top of the swing, as you start down, you don't really have much room to step into the left because you're already a little bit stuck over on the left side. Watch with Ernie. He has a little bit of an overswing in this older version of his swing. His arms just keep right on going a little bit too far. He looks like Gumby at that point. But he's still got his weight turned into the right side. So he hadn't really screwed up his pivot by overswinging. And he's going to fix that overswing by extending his right arm back out. I should show you that from this side. I didn't give you full truth in advertising this way. Here's his overswing. See that right arm's going a little past 90 degrees? So watch as he starts down. He extends that right arm right back out and fixes that little problem in quotes. So he's back in a perfect plane. So that's just his little idiosyncrasy. He overswings it a little bit. He doesn't do that anymore, and then he extends it back out, gets right back to perfect. And like I said, he hasn't messed up his pivot. Get that box back on here. Everything turns to the right. Overswing, extends it back out, fixes that problem, and now he's able to step into the left side and pivot back to the left side. And so at impact, he's got everything turned right back into the left side. You don't have any room to go because you're already a little bit stuck on the left side. Again, we saw that problem with the pivot. Now, notice how your buddies were talking about how you didn't have a lot of power. If we're doing what you're doing from too low a position, we don't have any lag angle reserved, or there's nothing left to hit it with. You've lost all your angle. We don't even worry about that. That's gonna take care of itself. Once we get the other stuff, either you have natural lag or we can add that at that point. But we don't fix that problem because that's a result of everything else. We get the width and we'll have most of this solved. You can just see there's no power left to really deliver to the ball. It's already a straight line. Watch how long it takes him to release that angle. See how his left arm is almost back to the address position, and now the club releases right at the point of impact. That gives you a big hit on the ball, whereas here you're having to kind of scrunch your arms up a little bit. So it's amazing. And this wasn't the top shot. This is the one you hit good. But you have to, coming in so low, you have a real hard time avoiding the top shot. And then because of the angle of attack, you have to kind of scrunch your arms up, which makes it more likely to top. Then you have to time it really well. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So again, this just speaks volume about your talent, that you don't top it every single time. So and you see there's just not much of a triangle left through the ball. So again, power loss, not one we have to worry about. All we got to worry about is the setup and the width on the backswing, and then we're going to be good to go. So what we're going to start with is a little quarter swing here. I don't actually have anybody. Well, I actually got a couple, but here's what we're looking at. If we're looking at Tiger pitching the ball, his old pitching. This is like a quarter swing. Watch how this club goes back to parallel, and I want you to watch his right arm. See how the right arm is pretty straight, and it hadn't really moved much. Get a little more light on that. That right arm has stayed pretty extended. Going a little bit past parallel, but it's basically a quarter swing. And then watch him coming through, and he's going to come through to about the same position. See how that club stays right out in front of him? So that's basically a quarter swing. Here's the great Seve Ballesteros doing that same basic motion, like a quarter swing back and a quarter swing through. See how the right arm, there's not much need for that to fold up in that motion. So the right arm stays as straight as we can keep it. And then as he comes through, he's just basically coming through the ball. There's a little bit of pivot of the body as it follows with the matching up with the arm swing. But the arms are really stretched out. Let me just show you me doing it just because it's a clearer video. You see how that right arm stays fairly straight? And then as I come through, now I would critique that and say I'd love to see that right arm stay straighter than it is. Width has never been perfect for me. But there I keep everything coming through, and I'm hitting a higher shot, so I'm leaving the face wide open to hit that high shot. Pitch shot for that from the front view would be here. Basically, as I'm going back, my goal is to keep that right arm straight, but it doesn't stay as straight as I would like. But it's pretty good. So the triangle stays fairly intact. And then as I'm coming down, you'll see the hands are leading that because the triangle stays intact. And then I come in and I've got that slightly forward-leaning shaft. And then the triangle stays intact, and I just let my body turn through. So no need to fold that right arm much at all in that length of swing. So basically that's what we're going to start with here to get the feel of making the right swing, and that's half the swing right there. If we get that, then we can move on to the half swing. Here's like a half to quarter swing. I'm just using me because I don't have any of these guys doing half to quarters. My dad invented these basically. It's starting to come around on the tour a little bit, but it's a great tool. Left arm parallel, that's basically a half position. Go from that half, and as we're coming through, the arm triangle swings and the belt buckle turns. I like the simplicity of thinking of two moving parts. The triangle does the swinging, the belt buckle does the turning, and then I just let my body turn right on through. And there you can see how the body is matched up pretty much with the swing, and no need for the wrist to cock up very much. It's staying kind of extended. Somebody that does do that a lot happens to be Zach Johnson. Zach uses that swing a lot. and especially on his wedges. I could find some of those in here, but I'm not going to take the time to dig those up. But I'll just show him here with an iron, basically hitting a full iron shot. And you'll notice through the ball how he keeps that very much intact. Doesn't take a big, huge swing, but as he comes through, you see how that triangle stays intact, and he keeps that right arm really straight to the point they commented on how straight he kept it for how long. So it's a real key to accuracy if we can do that. And we can get more power by flashing the hands through there, but that's not going to do you any good, especially if you're working for a living. So being able to do those little quarter swings. Let's get to that. Let's see if we can